What's going on, dreamers? Today I have some really interesting stuff to share with you guys. It's some pretty unexpected information that I managed to acquire today, talking about something that's completely unrelated, and it's really interesting. I'll have to start from the beginning to kind of give you guys an idea of how I got where I am, how I got this information. So this all started because I've been doing research into canceled Dreamcast games, as many of you know, and I've been contacting various developers, and this particular information that I came across started with me asking about IHRA Drag Racing, which was a game that Bethesda was publishing for the Dreamcast, or at least they planned on putting it on Dreamcast. And I've been trying to figure out who was developing the game. Now, I have been able to confirm that there was a proposal for a Dreamcast version of the game, so it got that far. I just don't know who was developing it. So in order to find out who was developing the game, I tried to reach out to some people, including a company named Digital Dialect, which was the developer of the PlayStation 1 version of the game. And I assumed that maybe they had something to do with the Dreamcast port. So I had contacted someone from Digital Dialect quite a while back, and I hadn't heard anything. So I figured, oh, I'm probably not going to get a response. But then, surprisingly, today, I got a response. So this was not quite the response I was hoping for, but it kind of turned around when I got some information that I wasn't expecting. So let me read off what this guy said initially. So he said, my company, Digital Dialect, only worked on the PS1 conversion of IHRA Drag Racing. So, yeah, okay, so they didn't work on it. That's kind of a dead end there. But then he went on to say, but I did work on some Dreamcast 2 games. So right off the bat, that kind of threw me off, like Dreamcast 2, okay, that must have been a typo, so I just kind of wrote it off initially, because it didn't make any sense. No one knows about Sega working on a Dreamcast 2. As far as I know, that was never a thing. Dreamcast was not around long enough for them to start thinking about a successor. But anyway, so he went on to say from there, they were working on some Dreamcast 2 games that were never released due to the demise of the platform, most notably NASCAR, which was to be one of the launch titles. So here's where it kind of got interesting. So NASCAR, there was a game called NASCAR Heat that was rumored to be headed to Dreamcast, at least according to the Sega Retro list of unreleased games. NASCAR Heat was one of those games. Also, Sega was thinking of porting NASCAR Arcade to the Dreamcast as well. But because EA owned the rights to the NASCAR license on consoles, they weren't able to do it. And of course, EA didn't want to publish on the Dreamcast. So that was kind of the end of that. So I figured that was probably what he's referring to there. So let me scroll down here. So next, he said, I asked for more information on the NASCAR game. And he said, the NASCAR game we were working on was for the next generation Dreamcast. So here I was getting confused again, because initially he said Dreamcast 2, and I thought, okay, he just had a typo of some sort. But no, here he is again saying next generation Dreamcast, and he went on to say a system that was never released. Well, obviously, there was never a Dreamcast 2, but at this point I'm really confused. Why is he referring to a next generation Dreamcast 2? It didn't make any sense. But anyway, he went on to say it was planned on as being one of the launch titles for the console. The whole thing was a fiasco. After about 3 months of development, Sega realized that they couldn't do the game because EA had exclusive rights to NASCAR on any video game system. They were going to switch us to another title, but before that even got started, they basically went out of business, so out of the console business. So I was just really confused at this point what he was referring to when he said next generation Dreamcast, Dreamcast 2. But then I thought about it. I was like, oh, wait a second. So it was going to be a launch title for this Dreamcast 2, which would have made it fairly early on. So what if he's referring to Black Belt? Greetings from the future. So I needed to travel back to the past in order to clarify something, because it seemed like that when I first uploaded this video, people were getting confused as to what I was referring to when I said Black Belt. If you're not up on your Dreamcast history, Black Belt was not a Dreamcast successor. It wasn't a Dreamcast 2, like the guy I was talking with kept referring to it as. He was actually confused himself. He didn't know what he was talking about. I had to figure that out on my own. What I think he was actually referring to was the Saturn 2, which is what people were calling the next generation Saturn back in 1995 or 1996. But there were actually two different versions of Sega's next generation console, one from Sega of America and one from Sega of Japan. Yes, they were actually competing back in the day for the next generation console. It was crazy times. But Sega of America had what they called Black Belt, and Sega of Japan had a console that was codenamed Dural, which was eventually renamed to Katana, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that name. But Katana was eventually chosen as the final design for the Dreamcast, and Sega of America's Black Belt console was scrapped. So that is what I'm referring to when I say Black Belt. It's not an unannounced Dreamcast 2, it was just an alternate version of the Dreamcast that never came to be. So with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. So I know there were some games in development for this early Black Belt version of the Dreamcast, and so NASCAR was likely to be one of those games, a launch title for the Black Belt, which I was really excited about because not many games are known to exist for Black Belt. I know there was one other game. I can't really think of it at the moment, but I'm pretty sure there is one other that is known for Black Belt, but here we are with another one, NASCAR, which is probably NASCAR Arcade, if I had to guess. He didn't actually specify what NASCAR game it was. Maybe it was completely original. I'm not really sure, but yeah, really, really cool. So anyway, I actually told him about Black Belt and asked him if maybe that was what he's referring to, and yeah, he said that sounds familiar. Time frame is certainly right. We were primarily a PC game developer, so I didn't really follow the hardware for systems that well, and that was 25 years ago. So yeah, I'd say it's pretty much confirmed at this point. This was for Black Belt, which is really, really cool. I was excited to find out that this game was for Black Belt. Definitely not the information I was expecting to get when inquiring about a drag racing game for Dreamcast. But it got even more interesting from here, believe it or not. Like, this just keeps getting more interesting. So after that, I said, you mentioned you were working on more than one game, because he said games, plural, but he only mentioned NASCAR. Also mentioned another game, which I assume is this next one here. But he said, we were originally slated to do the Sonic racing game for the platform. This just keeps getting better. Sonic Racing. So there was Sonic R, obviously, on the Saturn, which was an on-foot Sonic Racing game. And then, obviously, the Sonic Racing games for the Game Gear as well. I forget what those were called. But yeah, there was never a Sonic Racing game after that up until All-Stars, which was a PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 game, which was actually a really good kart racer. He doesn't really go into too much detail about what Sonic Racing was, but obviously it's a Sonic Racing game. But he goes on to say that Sega US found out that only Japanese developers were allowed to use games featuring, or to develop games featuring Sonic, so they tossed us a breadcrumb of NASCAR, only not to get that one right either, with EA controlling the license. So, yeah, this guy was pretty upset about this, obviously. Having two games in development for months and then finding out they can't make them, they can't continue. But, I mean, man, two kind of bombshells in a row here. A NASCAR game for the original version of the Dreamcast, the Black Belt version, 3DFX console, and that there was a Sonic racing game in development for that console as well, or at least it was, that was what was planned originally before the NASCAR game. I don't know how far along that was. It was probably just a concept before Sega found out they couldn't actually make it. This is just another example of how kind of disjointed the relationship between Sega of America and Sega of Japan was at the time. It's crazy. They were developing two different consoles. One wouldn't allow the other to use certain licenses. It was just a crazy time for Sega. But man, this is some really interesting stuff. I did ask him if he had any assets left over from these games, because it'd be awesome to see concept art or something like that. But he says he doubts it. He said he'd have to look through his archives. He's currently on a trip international away from home, so he's not able to look right now, but I'll definitely let you guys know if I'm able to come across anything. It'd be really cool to see some concept art for Sonic Racing on the Dreamcast. How cool would that be? But even the NASCAR game, it'd be cool to see something from that. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. I was really excited about all of this stuff that's been revealed, stuff that's never been revealed up until this point. So I hope you guys found this stuff interesting as I find it. I always find this stuff fascinating, but especially about black belts, because not much is known about it other than obviously the hardware itself. But as far as the software side of things, we don't really know if there were that many games in development. We know there are at least two now, one that I can't think of, and this NASCAR game and Sonic Racing, which is what it originally was. Apparently, I don't know if they moved directly from Sonic Racing to NASCAR, if they were completely separate games, or if they started on Sonic Racing and then used the engine for the NASCAR game. I don't really know. I could follow up on this, but I didn't really want to bother this guy too much. But he gave me a lot of information anyway, so I'm very happy with that. But anyway, guys, that is going to be it for this video. Hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.